This episode is presented by the Visit Cedar City Brian Head Tourism Bureau. Discover the art of adventure at Utah's gateway to the parks. Cedar City is within a few hours' drive from 6 different national parks and monuments, and only 30 minutes from fresh snow at Brian Head Resort. Check out visitcedarcity.com to plan your next trip. This episode is sponsored by the Cedar City Business and Innovation Center, dedicated to supporting local businesses and entrepreneurs. It provides resources and services aimed at fostering business creation, growth, and retention. The center features the Makerspace, where entrepreneurs and small businesses can have access to 3D printers, video production, and photography equipment, t-shirt printing, and more. Whether you're starting a new venture or looking to expand an existing one, the Cedar City Business and Innovation Center offers the tools and guidance to help you succeed. To learn more and get involved, visit innovationcenter.cc. Welcome to Explore Local. Today we have Mirryn Morrill on our show today, and she is with Ganache-d in our historic downtown. So Mirryn, do you want to just give us a little rundown of what is Ganache-d?
Yeah, first of all, thanks for inviting me on the podcast.
So glad to have you.
To be here.
We've already been chuckling it up. So
yes. So yeah, Ganache-d is a gourmet brownie shop. We sell brownies, caramel apples, and ice cream, and we're located just right in the heart of downtown on Main Street inside of the historic theater.
Yeah, that's awesome. So if for those of you that can't picture it on our historic downtown, they have the classic theater signs that kind of are...
Yeah, the marquee.
Yeah, the marquee. Thank you. That's the word I was trying to look for. The describing the Ganache-d gourmet brownies. So tell us what I had never actually heard the term Ganache. You can tell how uncultured I am before I heard of your business. So explain to our listeners, what is Ganache? What does that mean?
Ganache is a type of chocolate. Essentially, it's like a chocolate mixture, a creamy chocolate. But all of our brownies are topped in ganache. So that's where the name Ganache-d came from, because every brownie has been ganached, if you
So you're using it as a verbify.
Yes.
Yeah, a verb as well. Verbify. I like that word. Is that word in the dictionary?
I don't think so.
Or the thesaurus? So, that's good. That's awesome. So how long have you been there? Let's start
We
with
have
that.
been there 2 years. Actually, next week will be like our 2-year mark.
Oh,
so,
all right. Are we going to do a birthday party?
Yeah, we're planning on
birthday special?
Yeah, special.
Okay,
special
you'll have
treat in the store.
Yeah, you'll have to let me know.
Okay.
So what were you doing before Ganache-d, though?
Good question. So I own another company called Morr Decor, and the warehouse for it is actually located in the same building as Ganache-d.
Oh, okay.
But it is an online baking supply company, and I work with custom sugar cookie decorators all over the country.
Really? This is news to me. I didn't know this.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I've been running this online business since 2020.
Oh, wow.
But because it's online, it actually just ended up giving my husband and I a lot of freedom. And we realized we had a lot of time and wanted to take on a new project. So when we found the theater and walked through it, we loved it. And I called my parents. My mom and I are partners in Ganache-d.
Okay.
And I was like, we need to all walk through this building together.
Yeah.
Because we had gone through a couple of other just storefront locations here in town to potentially put a bakery, but none of them really ended up working out. So
they didn't sing to you the same way.
No. And just the location of downtown was perfect. And when we walked through the building, we loved it.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was a lot of work to put the bakery into that building. It's where the old concessions of the movie theater used to be.
Right.
So we got really lucky with already having plumbing and water and all of that kind of stuff there, it was seriously a huge blessing, but it needed a huge redecoration. So it was a lot of work, but we ended up putting it in after that. So yeah, before I was just running my online company, and I still do that today. But then we just found a little break in our schedules where we were like, let's start something new. And that's how Ganache-d was born.
I love that. I actually, on one of our other podcasts, I was mentioning how I just admire people that are entrepreneurial. because I'm not a risk taker. I'm very entrepreneurial, but I'm also very like safe. I'm a risk-free person. That's why I took the career route that I went in. That's why I work for government. It's like very safe. But one of the things I love is helping support people that have that entrepreneurial spirit and giving the support behind people that are willing to take on that challenge and have a vision. And so it doesn't surprise me at all to hear that you have this online business. And I actually want to digress into that. So how did you even get started with this online business? Because so many people are doing online businesses these days, and they talk about that freedom that they have. And I think to myself, I need freedom like that, But it sounds like you got bored and started 5 other businesses,
No, I wouldn't say bored, but they say like you quit your 9 to 5, then you work for yourself when you work 24/7, and you think like you're free from the 9 to 5, but really you're consumed
because it's always
business.
on your mind.
Yes.
Yeah, it's true.
And that's so true. But so I guess this goes into like a whole different side of Mirryn.
Yeah, let's hear it.
I was in the SUU nursing program a couple of years ago. Yes. And I was dead set on being a nurse. I loved the program. SUU is amazing. The nursing program is phenomenal.
My wife's a professor in that program, actually. I don't know if I told you that.
No, I didn't know that. So yeah, the program is amazing. And I ended up with a gap semester when I applied for the nursing program before I got in. And during that semester is when everything happened with COVID.
Yeah.
So everything went online at the end of my very last semester. And then I was going to have the whole rest of the year off.
The last semester of that year or of the program in general?
Before I applied to nursing school.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
I see. Yeah.
So my last semester of prereqs, I guess.
Gotcha. Yeah.
And then I ended up starting my business in that in-between time. So I got into the nursing program and was starting in January.
Oh, okay.
And then I started my company when I was working in healthcare down in St. George during COVID. But that was crazy. And I worked 3 days on and 4 days off. And so during those 4 days, I didn't really have anything to do. I also worked part-time for SUU, but I still was just kind of bored. My husband was working a 9 to 5 in construction. He's an electrician.
Gotcha.
And he had a coworker. This is the most crazy start to a business, but he had a coworker whose wife made custom sugar cookies. She actually still does, and they're in Cedar now, but she makes custom sugar cookies for a living.
What's that business called?
Her business is called Iced.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so if you are listening to this and you're local to Cedar or St. George, cookies are the best.
Okay,
but
great to hear.
Yeah, she has a cottage bakery here, but she had been talking to her husband about needing a stencil to be able to stencil the Dixie State logo onto a bunch of cookies for the college down there. And so he somehow knew that I had a Cricut. My husband and him had talked about it. And she's like, see if your wife can make a stencil on her Cricut for me. So I made one.
Right.
And she's like, you should sell these. Like, the custom cookie industry is exploding right now. This is like the perfect time to get in. And I don't make cookies. And so I feel like I'm kind of an outsider in my industry when it comes to
That's funny.
Just not having that knowledge
you're
that
making
everybody
these
else
stencils.
has. Yes.
Yeah, and for those who don't know what a Cricut is, it's like a little machine you can buy. A lot of people do the vinyl lettering and those cutouts and stuff. But you're doing cutouts out of like a plastic?
Correct. Okay. Yeah. So the stencil is just made out of this food safe plastic, and it's about 6 inches. You cut a design into it, and then people can put it on top of a sugar cookie and then either like spray edible paint over it or like put frosting over it or something like that to create the design. But so I made it for her, and she's like, you should start this business. And I was like, you know what? I have 4 days off every week. Like, I'm just going to start a little Etsy shop. And then it blew up. Really? And so I was a couple days before going to nursing school, and I'm like, I think I really love business. Like, small business is just like where my heart is at. And getting into nursing school was not easy for me. I had to retake classes. So I had so much on the line.
A lot of commitment already invested.
And I'm like, I can't believe I'm considering just like walking away from all of this. But I just sent an email and I'm like, I can't start nursing school. Like, give my spot to an alternate. And they emailed me back and they were like, do you want a few days to think about this? Because like, we'll save your spot for a little bit. They were so sweet. But I was like, do it now or I'll change my mind. So I dropped out, and then I ended up just running my business. I did take a few classes in the business school at SUU, and I had enough credits to graduate very soon after. And so I did end up graduating from SUU, but I took my business full time. And then eventually my husband quit his job and started working with me. And then that's when the whole theater came into it.
And so you were just have your own production of these.
Yes.
And do you kind of manufacture a lot and then sell per the quantity, or do you take orders and produce based on the orders, or is it a mix of both?
It's a mix of both. So we do custom work for a lot of our clients, but then we also have just our own designs that we've created that people can purchase on our website, and then we will just make that exact design and ship it. For the most part, it's just made to order, but we now we have a third-party manufacturer for our cookie cutters because we used to do them in-house.
That's what I was wondering about.
We 3D print our cookie cutters. So at one point we had like 14 3D printers and we were just running them like crazy, but it just got to be too much. So we actually outsourced to a small business in St. George that specializes in 3D printing for small businesses. So he makes our cookie cutters now, and it has been the best. So we just have a warehouse where we have a lot of our designs stocked, and then we just take on custom work as it comes.
Where's your warehouse? Is it in their Ganache-d building?
Yes, it is inside the theater.
Is that like upstairs or something? Oh, okay.
Yeah, it is. If you go into Ganache, you can see there's like an upstairs. There's a Ganache office, and then our warehouse is behind it.
Oh, okay. All right. And it's living with the ghosts of theaters past or something in the upstairs, right?
Not many people even know that we're there.
Yeah.
It was in our house for a long time. And then eventually it just grew to the point where I'm like, if we don't get this out of our house, it's going to consume us.
Do you feel like you're in the next few years going to even outgrow that space for warehousing?
Yes and no. If we continue on the path that we're going right now, we are already outgrowing it, definitely. But we do want to switch to more digital products. We started selling digital products over the last maybe 18 months, and it's gone really well. And so our goal is to kind of sell what we have right now, and we will release like a few new collections throughout 2025. But the goal is to focus a lot more on digital products and try to have that be the main source of
what kind of digital projects? Products.
We have an online course that teaches other people how to make their own cookie stencils.
Oh, wow.
Because a Cricut is super affordable. And you can go to Joann and buy one for $160, an older model.
Right.
And so we were like, we just need to teach people to start doing this themselves, which a lot of people think is crazy because we make our living
That's your bread and butter, right?
Yes.
Well, my first thought when you started describing that you got a Cricut and did it, I thought, well, everybody and their dog's just going to go buy their own Cricut and make it themselves.
Yes.
That was my immediate thought because in another job that I had with another city previously, we needed to have a bunch of things made, vinyl lettering and other things. And I finally just told my staff, go buy a Cricut. Let's just make this ourselves. So that is so, see, I told you, entrepreneur, you just have this entrepreneurial mindset. So keep going. And then I've got a follow-up question with that because this is great.
Yeah. So we made a course that teaches people how to, the main thing is it teaches them how to use the Cricut software to design a stencil, because there are some specific things that you have to do in order to make sure that it cuts. And vinyl is easy because you just peel apart the parts that you don't want after it cuts. But a stencil, you have to make sure that everything stays intact. So you have to add like little supports and things like that in your design. And so that's what the majority of the course is teaching, is how to create the design. Yeah. And then obviously how to use your Cricut to cut it out. But we have had a lot of success with selling that. And a lot of people thought that we were crazy because we make our living off of making stencils for people. But the reality is there's always going to be people who just have no interest in learning that. They're good at making cookies, and that's what they want to do. They just want
to buy the stencil. They don't care about having this design thing.
And honestly, I think what surprises a lot of people too is like our business is B2B because we're never working with the person that is buying those cookies.
Oh, okay.
So we're working with other business owners, and a lot of the time their customer will pay for the stencil to be made if they want something specific. Yeah. So there are still a lot of bakers who just don't want to. They will
around the country, they're just hanging them on their shelves saying, hey, we've got these, stencils for a witch for Halloween.
Well, no, they'll say like, if you want this custom design, I have to have a stencil made for it. So are you guys willing to pay to have that stencil made if you want something specific? If not, maybe they'll say I can modify it and do something more simple or something like that.
Okay.
But a lot of the time the customer will end up paying for it. And I would say the majority of the custom work that we do is logos for businesses. So we'll be in touch with the baker and the business. Okay. And they'll be sending over their images and things like that for us to use to make a stencil for them. And then the company will end up paying the baker for the products to be made for their order.
Okay, gotcha.
So it's very unique. It's like the smallest niche on earth. I always tell everybody because everyone is like, there's no way that there's big business there, but it's crazy. Well, like so many people are involved in it.
That's what people don't realize. And that's what I love the creativity is a lot of time those little niche businesses are exactly what blow up.
Yes.
Because there's a need that people just don't think about that needs to be filled. Like your friend needed a stencil for a sugar cookie that was custom made. And where is she going to get a stencil to make that? And, maybe she didn't know how to make one herself, but you've partnered up. That's how so many great businesses start up and so many great ideas is people go, I don't know how many times I've heard people say, why didn't I think of that? Right?
Yes.
You know?
Yes.
And that's one of those ideas.
I think that all the time.
Yeah. It's like, why didn't I think of that? And you know what, this is actually a good segue too, is one of the things I wanted to highlight with you is as a small business owner, and you talked about SUU, you actually as a small business owner won some entrepreneurial contests that we have each year. It's around the same time as the One Utah Summit. So can you describe like what's the name of that contest, what it is, what does it involve, and how did you go about winning that contest among dozens of entrepreneurs who apply for this contest? We held another one this year and you won it last year. And this year, were you a judge on it this year too?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. That's what I was thinking. So talk about that contest. And was that specific for Ganache-d or your stencil company?
Yes. So everything that I won money for was for the stencil company.
Okay.
Because Ganache wasn't,
it wasn't quite
exist
there
yet when we first did it. And then this year we didn't qualify to enter with Ganache because there is like an income threshold.
Yeah. You're just doing so well.
Oh
right?
yeah. We're just doing so great.
That's how every small business owner feels, right? You're doing great, but
no, I actually talked to a lot of people about this year at the One Utah Summit because I'm like, it's crazy that Ganache on paper makes so much more money than my stencil company. But, well, maybe not so much more, but there's so much more overhead that comes with a brick and mortar business.
Which, by the way, what is the name of the stencil company? I don't know if we
Morr Decor.
Oh, you did say that earlier.
Yeah, so it's like MORR, like Morrill.
Oh, I love it.
So it's a play on our name, but then like the decor is cookie decorating.
Yeah. For whatever reason, you made me think of, you ever seen the show, the movie, The Wonders?
No.
Or, no, sorry, That Thing You Do.
No.
With Tom Hanks, and he starts this little, it's supposed to be a spinoff of a spoof almost of, it's not a spoof movie, but it's a fun movie. It's about like starting up like the Beatles or something.
Okay, no.
But it's not the Beatles. Anyways, they named their band The Wonders, right? But they spelt like the number one. So everybody just mispronounces it, the Oneaters, instead of the Wonders in the beginning. So they changed it to the Wonders. Sorry, random digression, but
I love
the
that.
spin on words made me think that. But everybody pronounces Morr Decor correctly, I assume.
Yes, my first name, that's a different story, but Morr Decor, they usually get right.
I know, that's funny. Okay, so tell about that competition and how you went about that, because that's a great opportunity for other small business owners here in Iron County. Well, and even those outside of Iron County can apply to it through this SUU entrepreneur competition. And what's the actual name of it? I mix it up every time.
So there's a couple. There's some that are through SUU. The ones that I did, one was called Opportunity Quest, but I think it's called Business Breakthrough now. Okay. I'm pretty sure that's the same competition. And then they have the Utah Entrepreneurship Challenge, which, if I remember, I think you have to be in college, but you can live anywhere in Utah to apply for that. And then they also have S4, which is another SUU competition, and it's invite only. And then the One Utah Summit hosts the State Bank Business Challenge.
State Bank Business Challenge, that's what it's called.
And anybody in Utah can enter that if they meet the qualifications.
Yeah, of any age, or you don't have to be in college or anything like that. Yeah, we saw some great businesses this year.
Oh, they were amazing.
Yeah, from like Mexican candies to music software to lures for a fishing line. There were so many cool concepts. So
they were amazing this year. I kept telling the people I was sitting next to, I'm like, I don't know how a cookie stencil cookie cutter company won this competition when people are designing software with AI and all these complex
But on
things.
that note, I know exactly how. It's because you're filling a need where people said, why didn't I think of that? Yeah. And that's why you saw this wonderful little Mexican candy company and food company, Tiny's, up there with
Yes.
with these software companies that are selling to, businesses and, just have these incredible software platforms is because a need's a need, right?
Correct.
Regardless of, whose need it may be filling. And that's why knowing your target audiences in business is also pretty essential. So
Yeah. So, I mean, honestly, how everything started was I was in the business program at SUU for my last semester of college.
Okay.
And one of my classes offered extra credit if we entered Opportunity Quest, which, like I said, I think it's now Business Breakthrough.
Mm-hmm.
But if we entered, we got like $200 or something like that.
Oh, yeah.
And extra credit. And so I was like, oh, well, I'm just going to enter for the $200.
Yeah,
and
sure.
Then I ended up getting selected to pitch in front of judges. And then at the end of the night, I won. And I was so shocked because I felt like everybody else, they were standing up and they seemed so professional and so rehearsed. I mean, granted, I had been in the school of business for maybe 6 months or 6 weeks.
Oh, wow.
And everything before that in my life was nursing.
Yeah.
And so I didn't know anything about
totally new
business, nothing. And so these judges are asking me questions like, tell us about your margins. And I'm like, my page margins for my presentation?
What's a margin?
What is a margin? So I am asking these questions feeling like I'm just looking like I know nothing about business. And at that point, I was just an Etsy shop. I didn't have my own website. I didn't have anything like that.
Yeah.
And anyway, I felt so unexperienced and just like I did not belong there. But at the same time, I just told myself, like, I'm just going to get out there and I'm just going to be friendly and talk about my business. This is what my business is. Here's the numbers I know. I don't know what a margin is, but here's my numbers.
As long as you know your numbers, right?
Yes.
When the terminologies, that's
exactly.
That's
so once they could say like, how much does it cost? How much do you sell for? I'm like, oh yeah. Let me tell you about that. But anyway, and then they loved it. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is a
There's something
business.
to it.
This is growing. So then they sent me to the Utah Entrepreneurship Challenge on behalf of SUU. So every university sends somebody and then everybody else can apply.
Okay.
And so there was a bunch of different prizes. There was like a bootstrapping prize, a grand prize, a specific, like each judge got a prize. So there was just a bunch of different prizes.
I like the way they do their prizes in the State Bank Challenges where the judges can choose so it's not like everybody wins sort of thing. It's like, it's almost like Shark Tank. If the judges are almost like the investors and they're saying, I'm going to invest in this business because I think this one's going to do really well. That's what's cool about that.
So in the Utah Entrepreneurship Challenge, it was the same way. There was a bunch of different prizes and people and organizations had donated prizes. So there was prizes in their name and things like that. And so I ended up, there wasn't like first, second, third, fourth, fifth place. It was more just like you got these
how much
prizes
prize monies
and
did
how
you
much
win?
prizes.
Yeah.
So if I remember right, I'm pretty sure I came in fourth place, if we want to call it places, but as far as prizes.
Yeah.
And that was huge because the people who had won like first, second, and third place, their businesses seemed insane compared to mine. Like I could not even comprehend exactly what they were doing because it was just so advanced and out there.
Yeah.
And that's when I was like, okay, if I can be up here with these guys, like maybe I'm a business person, like I can live in this world and I can do this.
What a surreal feeling.
Yeah.
I think that's how a lot of businesses start is like, oh, maybe I'm on to something. That's just got to be so surreal. Yeah.
Yeah. And where I hadn't been a part of my industry before, I think that's where a lot of I wouldn't say I didn't have confidence, but I just didn't feel comfortable in my industry because I didn't make cookies. I didn't know other bakers in the community. I only knew my friend.
Yeah.
And I was just doing this hoping that like people are going to like these designs and these products. And I obviously worked with her a bit to figure out like, how do I make products that people are going to want to buy?
What do bakers want to see?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so S4 happened. I got invited to that and that's at SUU. And that is like, there's a winner, $10,000 prize. And I won that. And then I was like, okay, I'm going. So at this point I had won everything that the college had put on or been a part of this year. And everyone's like, who is this girl? Like before this, I was in the nursing program. Nobody even knew who I was. And
I don't even know who this girl is, right?
So then State Bank came along and then it's businesses from the community. So it's not just students and their student businesses. It was like, okay, no, these are real businesses and amazing businesses. Like People were coming up with products that are already in grocery stores and things like that. And it felt like Shark Tank. I was like, this is crazy.
Yeah.
And so it was even different than this year. There was no grand prize when I competed in the State Bank Business Challenge. It was just tokens, and then we got to pick our prizes, kind of how they did this year. So if a judge gave you a token, you could pick $1,000 or you could pick.
Oh, I see.
And so in that one, I can't remember. I think I got the second most amount of prize money and the most amount of tokens.
Oh,
but
wow.
It was weird. Like there was no winner. It was kind of like everybody won when I did it.
Yeah.
Everybody made a very similar amount of money at the end of it all.
Okay.
But I got the governor's award. And a bunch of other tokens.
Is that a specific amount of prize money?
Yeah, so I think it was $2,000, and it was Governor Cox's wife who awarded it when I did
Abby
it.
Cox,
Yes, and I loved her. She was awesome. So I got an award specifically from their office, and I think they had that this year also. It was just displayed a little bit different.
Cool.
But yeah, so I just was pitching like nonstop my stencil
awesome.
business, and then at that point I was like, okay, now like we're really taking this full time. My husband came on with me. We blew up the business. And then we got to the point where we wanted to start Ganache. My husband and I love building. And so I think a lot of what intrigued us with starting Ganache was we get to redecorate this building.
Yeah, this
historic
beautiful
building.
historic building
Yes.
on a historic main street.
And so it's not that we couldn't have focused more on Morr Decor or we got bored or the business wasn't there, but like we needed something new to keep us excited about business. And so now we're running them both.
Yeah.
But I will say, if you have the opportunity to participate in any kind of pitch competition, and I have since learned there's way more that I didn't even know about happening just in the community, like just do it, because you honestly, first of all, never know what's going to happen. Like I did not think I was going to win the first one I did. I honestly didn't think I was going to win any of the ones that I won. But the most valuable thing you can gain from it is not even the money. It's just the connections and the people that you meet, the networking that happens at the finals and those the actual competitions. And so you don't even have to win to build those relationships. And that's what is the most important. That's what honestly has helped me more than any of the prize money ever has.
Yeah, I'm really glad you highlighted that, because this year, and it's my first experience with the State Bank Business Challenge, and I got to be one of the preliminary judges, and there was, a few dozen of those. Yes. And we filled out surveys, and then, the best businesses rose to the top based on the rankings that each preliminary judge gave. And one of the things that I really took out of it, especially after the final judging, were you one of the final judges? I'm trying to remember on stage.
No,
or
I was also, I think I was in the same round as you, just in a different judging room.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. One of the things that really stood out to me about the competition was the direct and indirect mentorship opportunities. And so what I mean by that is during the competition, there were, or during and after, there were judges who were going up to these businesses and giving them advice and maybe who to connect with, but also indirect, just in some of the questions. And that's what we were talking about with like the margins. Like you may not have known and understood what margins were, but in doing that competition, it made you go, and I'm putting words in your mouth, oh crud, maybe I need to understand what is margins. It's not just the space on my student papers that I've got to turn in, right? And so I saw a lot of questions being asked by these small business owners, and some of them it filtered out, did they have a good business plan or not? And others, it filtered out, they did have a great business and a great business plan, but maybe they didn't understand some of the nuances of small business. And I've said this a couple times on the podcast, and I'll say it again, is one of the hard parts about small businesses is a good baker usually really knows how to bake well, but they maybe don't understand the finances or the HR, or there's just things that kind of come out of left field as a small business owner. You're like, oh, I didn't really realize that. And those small businesses that can adapt, whether that's they learn it themselves or like what you did, where you contract out. You said, hey, in-house is getting too much for us. Some small businesses die on trying to do it all in-house. Yes. And then others go, and they figure out how to expand their in-house production, or they go, hey, how could we contract this out? So that's a real digression, but that's one of the things that I really love about these competitions is they just give an opportunity for small businesses to learn and to find support. And you had mentioned something about how in this competition, or since you're going in the competition, these competitions after, you've actually connected with a business that was in the competition who didn't even win it. So tell a little bit about that.
Yes. So I mentioned earlier, we outsourced all of our cookie cutter manufacturing, and we actually hired a company who pitched in a competition that I judged a year ago, probably, but they did not win. And I love him. So if you listen to this, I'm so sorry. The pitch was not the best, but the business was exactly what I needed. And I was in the room. And so I hired him and his company to start manufacturing all of our cookie cutters. And we have given him multi-$1,000 orders since he's been in that competition. I mean, from me alone as a client, he has made more than he could have if he even won first place in the competition. So you just never know what's going to come from putting yourself out there and doing something like that, because it is scary. It is horrifying to stand up in front of a bunch of people who are quite literally judging you and judging what you've built, and to just say what you're working on and share your struggles. And I just think that, like you said, there's so many good outcomes that can come because of doing something like that that aren't necessarily realized in winning a prize. And mentorship is a big one. I think just like getting to know other people who can help you in those specific areas of your business that maybe you're not really great at. And I found my accountant through the State Bank Business Challenge. I didn't win he offered a prize of accounting. I didn't win it, but I hired him after the competition because he was a part of it. And so I think just the networking is the main reason why you should be a part of something like that if you can, because so many things can come from it.
Well, and I think, someone may be a part of this, one of these challenges and do a pitch, and it might not go that great. But if you've got a great idea or you make those right connections, I love that you said that is, that's not necessarily a knock on a business. It's a learning opportunity.
Yes.
Because I could tell you for jobs or presentations that I've done, some of them have been out of the park, and some of them have been like, oh my gosh, I did horrible in that, right? And those are learning opportunities for businesses. And I think that's why every small business should try and go be a part of these business challenges, because you learn a lot about yourself and maybe where you need to button things up a little bit. And you're also going to make some of these connections that's going to help further your business. And you're going to find that there are actually supports or synergies that might help your business move forward, right?
Yeah.
So
I think in the room that I judged in for this most recent State Big Business Challenge, there was a judge behind me who asked almost every single person, but it was such a good question. She just said, what is your biggest challenge in your business right now? Like, what is your main obstacle?
Yeah, I love that.
And it was crazy how many people couldn't answer.
Yeah, they didn't know.
And I think a lot of the time you either think, I don't really have a huge problem, like money would be nice, or there's tons of problems. I can't even think of which one is the biggest problem, But ever since judging with her, I've even been asking myself that more and more and more lately with both of my companies, like, what is our biggest problem right now? How can we take the biggest problem and turn that into like something that we don't even worry about, And then of course, another biggest problem is going to come along, and then we're going to have to find a solution for that. But I feel like if you think that way, then you'll constantly be improving your business. So I loved that she was asking that.
Yeah. And I feel bad because sometimes I repeat some of my thoughts and comments from the previous podcast, but I listened to this thing the other day, and it talked about Kobe Bryant, the basketball player, and how when he was young, a lot of the players that he played against focused on all their strengths. And his mentality was, I'm going to focus on all my weaknesses because I know what my strengths are, and I'm going to maintain my strengths, but I'm going to focus on all my weaknesses. And he said over the years, those guys that were bigger and better players than him couldn't compete with him because he had focused on all their strengths and they were still doing the same exact thing. And I think that really applies in business too, is you really do. I mean, you don't need to like bring yourself down, but you need to evaluate like what is holding us back. And are there other options or solutions to this rather than just pulling our hair out, right? To make our business successful. And a lot of people don't know how to go about that. And that's where mentorship comes into place. We have the Business and Innovation Center through Southwest Tech that offers free services to a lot of small businesses that people don't realize.
Yes.
In the competition, there was one, and I mentioned her a couple times, Tiny's, who's like Mexican candy and Mexican specialty foods and things. And she was out of Washington County. But I just remember not just being blown away by her business. Her business is really great. But I could tell she had some savvy entrepreneurship about her.
Yeah.
And
your business is you.
Yeah.
I 100% like believe that. And I think that especially in like pitch competitions or even just like scenarios where you're talking about your business, like people will see that you are a great person to be running your business, you know, because sometimes people have a great idea, but you're like, you are just not the person to make this idea explode. But anyway, keep going. She was amazing.
No,
she was.
You're right. I've seen that happen too, where things just flounder. And that was like a great idea, but they didn't know how to carry it forward. Right. So bringing the right people on board helps. And so, and since I was just a judge in the preliminary and she made it to the finals, and I think it's because not only does she have a great business idea, she had a level of confidence, but she knew her business. She knew her numbers. And she had a great personal story, which, you know, could kind of pull on the heartstrings and I think did a bit, but that was just an icing on the cake. The real thing is she knew her business. She knew her numbers. She knew for the most part where she wanted to go, but she knew she needed a little more support and help. Yeah. And so she really blew it out of the water in the preliminaries. And so I pulled her aside and I said, okay, tell me about like your following, you know, on social media, because she uses that as a tool. She's like, oh, I got a few thousand here and a few thousand here. I'm like, well, total of all your social media platforms, how many followers do you have? She's like 17,000. I'm like, oh my goodness. When you get in the final, even though that's not the hard numbers about your business, I said, throw that out there just as a little nugget. Yeah. And then throw in just numbers and facts about your business. And she was already dynamic without my advice. But she plugged in those couple little things during the final competition. And it really helped. Those little things helped take it over the top. But lots of people were going to her and these other businesses saying, okay, you're in the finals. Let's do this. And all the businesses really that I saw that were in the competition, I admired them.
Oh, me too.
And the ones that went to the finals blew it out of the water. But so that was a fun digression. I had no idea about the stencil company. I am glad we actually digressed on that, because that opened the door to a lot of what I wanted to talk about with Ganache too, is just, you know, there are hard things about starting a small business. So like you chose to pick an old building that's going to have a lot of overhead costs. Did you buy the building or are you leasing it?
So my parents actually purchased the building, but not outright when we first bought Ganache.
Okay.
It was a little bit of a complex situation, but they own it now.
Okay.
So.
And so there's a lot of overhead and nuances that you've got to work through. So tell me, and I don't know if there's a billion stories or if there's not going to be one that comes to your mind, but did you have any of those just like headache that are almost funny to look back on experiences in opening Ganache in this old historic building?
Yes, we have. Well, this isn't, I guess, one specific thing, but we opened at the end of October. And then
what year?
2022.
Okay.
And my husband and I had gone, like, we'll typically try to like book a hotel or something to have an annual planning day, like once a year toward the end of the year.
Oh, cool. Like a little retreat.
Yeah, a little retreat.
Yeah.
So we had one in 2023. And I remember listing out, like, these are my goals for Ganache. Like, by the end of the first quarter, we have got to figure out this, this, and this. And I remember it was the biggest headache. Like, I was thinking about it all the time. I'm like, this is insane. Yeah. And one of them was, this is going to sound so silly because like the huge companies that have the same model, I guess, I'm sure do not have this problem, but our flavors change every week. And so we had a hard time planning out our flavors far in advance. Like, it's easy to come up with the flavors you want for next week. But if we had to special order ingredients or things like that, we had to get into a system where we could have them planned out for months. Yeah,
you're not just living week to week.
Yes.
By the seat of your pants, flying by the seat of your pants.
Yes. And I was so stressed about that when we first opened because I felt like we were just kind of living week to week. And so my mom and I own the company together. My mom is in charge of the kitchen, basically. She's like the head baker.
Is she the one that came up with all the recipes and everything? Because you said you're not a baker. So
I'm
not a
baker. Yeah. So I'm like the boring partner. I do like the HR stuff, the taxes, like that kinds of stuff.
Well, you're the business savvy. She's the baker, right? That I was describing earlier. And you're the partner that helps keep the business side of things running.
Yeah, we absolutely could not do it without each other. But she's been making these brownies for over a decade.
Oh, wow.
And so she's the one.
By the way.
Thank you.
So your mom. Tell your mom's name because you've said mom a few times.
Yes, my mom's name is Cassie.
Cassie
Barney.
Okay, Cassie Barney. She's brownie baker extraordinaire.
Yes, she's amazing. So she has made every single recipe we've ever had in Ganache-d.
Wow.
Except one. I did make one. I'm not a baker, but I made one.
What's your recipe?
The apple pie brownie.
Oh, the apple pie
If you like the apple pie brownie, that's my creation.
There you go.
One and done, though. I'm not doing it anymore.
One and done. That's great.
I'm good at coming up with like, this would sound good, but she's the one that really like pulls it together. So
that's awesome.
She has come up with all the recipes, and for a while she was up here when we first opened. And so we were kind of doing okay and doing the whole week to week thing because she was here and she could make a brownie if we needed another one, or that one didn't turn out so we could do a different one. But I was so stressed about it. And so I told my husband, I'm like, we need to get to the point where we have our flavors planned out far in advance. And I was so stressed. And now, like, that is such a small thing. Like, that's
it's just a little blip.
Yeah, like, that's nothing. But I just remember, like, I was so stressed. I was constantly thinking about it, thinking, like, how are we ever going to get to the point where we have months worth of flavors planned? And now that's just like second nature. It's such a base level part of our business that it's like, how could I ever have been so worried about something like that, you know?
Well, I think that highlights something though, that every business and organizations, whether you're nonprofit or your government or a business, get hung up on. So a lot of my background's in strategic planning, and I describe strategic planning as you have to look out. So like for sports people, if you're carrying a football and you want to make it down that touchdown, or you're playing soccer and you want to make it into that goal, sometimes we get so focused on the defender or the hurdle right in front of us that we don't even see where the goal is at, right? But if you reverse your way of thinking in business planning and strategic planning, is my goal is right down there. So when these defenders or these hurdles are in front of you, you're like, oh, okay, I just need to veer left and pass right, to then get the ball down further. And I think a lot of times what you described about flavor of the week, those are what in business planning and strategic planning are called tactics. Whereas as a business, you need to have your goals, your high level goals, and then objectives of what's our objective. And then from there, you put in your strategies and your tactics to meet that objective, right?
Yes.
And people so often in organizations get hung up on the tactics of, oh, we're going to do a social media campaign, and oh, we're going to do this. But if you have your goal and your objectives outlined first, then every tactic you implement, whether it's flavor of the week or hot chocolate, we're going to talk about that in a minute.
Hey, we have it now.
I know. Then you can ask yourself, does this tactic help us achieve our objective in this area, which then helps us achieve our overall goal, right?
Yes.
And what you described perfectly epitomizes how people get so stressed about the tactics that they lose sight of the goal and the objectives, right?
Yes. I feel like you and I actually have very similar brains, because the way that, like, my husband and I have planned this way for years, and I do the exact same thing in my business. We have big goals. We just call them big goals. And like big goals take 6 months to 2 years to complete. Like, they're big,
they're long
goals.
range,
Yeah.
right?
But then from the big goals, then we used to do quarterly, but actually monthly is just better for our lifestyle. But we have, so what needs to get done this month to then make sure that we're on track to hit this big goal? And then from there, what are we doing this week? And then our life is crazy. So we can't quite go to like today.
Yeah.
But it's like, we need to get this stuff done this week, or we need to create a system for this week in order to stay on track to reach our big goal by this time next year or something like that. But I agree. I feel like sometimes people get so hung up on today and like this little problem that I'm having right now. And they forget, like, if they think of it in a more long-term perspective of like, this is just one little piece of what's going to get us to this end goal that we want so badly. But
and that's why it's like, you talk about the relationship with you and your mom. That's why it's so good. If you're a really good baker or a really good auto mechanic or whatever your business is, and you're trying to start your own business and you feel like you don't have the savvy to look out, you feel like, I'm really good at this and I know it can be successful. Find either a mentor or a consultant or someone that you can contract to do that part that you feel like is not your cup of tea, right?
Yes.
And a lot of people, like you said, you were in nursing school, didn't think you were going to be in business, but you realized you had a savvy for it. And so there are a lot of business owners that are a really good baker and realize, hey, I'm actually pretty savvy at business as well, you know?
Yes.
So you need to learn that about yourself as you're going throughout the business. Now, before I move on to the next part that I want to talk about, I do want to highlight the hot chocolate. So last year, my wife, is that your mother's recipe?
Actually, it was kind of a team. Even my sisters helped to create the hot chocolate recipe. So it's kind of our whole family.
Okay. So last year, my family got here during the winter time. I started in November. My family moved here in January of last year. And I went to Ganache and with my wife, and we got this hot chocolate. And it was blazing hot, first of all. We had to like let it cool down. But it was perfect on a cold, wintry day. And this hot chocolate, I don't even know how to describe it. It's a rich, creamy, almost dark chocolate with like a hint of cinnamon. I don't know if you're throwing nutmeg. I don't have the palate to know, but my wife does. She's one of those types where she does the little taste test. Let me see if I like this or not.
Yeah.
And we just loved it so much, in fact, that the other day we called and we said, hey, you got your hot chocolate in yet? And they told my wife no. So the next day, I called and they said, hey, do you got your hot chocolate? And they're like, yes, we do. And I was like, wait, did our phone call institute, we got
last Saturday.
Yeah, exactly. That's when we came in. And so we immediately drove. Oh, we left the house and immediately drove and got the hot chocolate. It was one of those comfort kind of things that we needed for the stressful, work.
Was it as good as you remember?
It was as good as we remember. Well, what I should say is it's as good as my wife remembered, which is what matters.
Yes.
She's the connoisseur and stuff. So, but yeah, it's fun to have those little niche things too of your company. So where I wanted to kind of redirect actually a little bit, and we could get back to Ganache as well, but sticking on this vein of entrepreneurship, the front of the Ganache building is your sweets and treats and the wonderful hot chocolate, your concessions area, you have your bakery stuff, but you have this huge movie theater. And yeah, I'm sure you guys were like, what do we do with this? Or maybe you knew from the start. So tell us what you did with the movie theater and how that's going. Yeah.
So when we first walked through the movie theater, like almost immediately, we were like, we need to create a venue, like an event center. It would be perfect. So to give a little context, before we came into the theater, somebody had turned the largest theater. So inside the movie theater, there are only 2 theaters.
Oh, okay.
So like they could only show 2 movies.
Oh, I thought there was only one. I didn't know. Okay. Yeah. So, I still need to get a tour officially.
Yeah. So there's a huge theater and then a smaller theater.
Okay.
And so in the big theater, somebody had already turned it into a CrossFit gym before we came in. And so it didn't have the sloped movie theater floor anymore. Oh, cool. They had already ripped out all the seats. So it was just like a shell.
A lot of the legwork was done too.
Yes. And so, there was still a lot to be done.
Oh, okay.
But it was a blank slate. We didn't have to like take a million trips to the dump and throw movie theater seats away or anything like that. And so when we walked through it, we're like, this needs to be an event center. It's just this big open space. And so we planned to do that first, but there were a couple of issues with the construction and with the old partner of the building and things like that. So we were waiting around for a while, almost, I'd say like 4 or 5 months. And we're like, we're not going to be making progress on this anytime soon. So we actually opened Ganache, and we were not planning on opening Ganache when we did. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And we were like, we can get in there. Like I said, we were really blessed with having plumbing and water, all of that kind of stuff, electricity where we needed it. Obviously we designed the bakery around where it was.
Yeah.
But we were really lucky in the fact that we really didn't have to do we didn't really have to do any construction, just redecorating. We painted, we put new floors,
which makes it a little easier on the permitting side of things, because you have to go, especially in an older building, you still have to go. When you make updates, if you're making significant updates, you have to conform to the most recent city code and all of that, which for small businesses, that can be another nightmare, because that's a whole new world that maybe you don't understand, which, by the way, my job is to help walk people through that and connect them with the right people at the city if they've not had to deal with that. So
yes, and that was something we did not know how to do, and I pretty much spearheaded the whole process. Yes, and it was so hard, and I think that is what honestly scared a lot of people away with that building, because it was vacant for a while, years. It was vacant for years, but I mean, I don't know if we just got lucky and we had a business that fit in there perfectly the way that it was, because we did not want to have to do crazy updates that made us have to bring the whole building up to code or anything like that. And so we had to be very strategic. We worked with an architect to essentially separate that area of the building into its own little property where we got the permit for it and everything like that. But we were so lucky because we did not have to do anything. We didn't have to. No
crazy structural things that you had to address.
And like I said, we did. I don't know if the layout would have been what we really wanted if we hadn't worked around what we already had.
Right.
But it was easy. We just brought cabinets in to build, close off the behind the counter section, I guess. And so we were not planning on doing any of that, but then we're we can get this up and opened quickly. So we started taking out the old flooring in April, I think, of 2022. And then we opened it in October. So it was fairly quick, but also a pretty long time. I'm pretty sure my husband and I were there for 12 hours a day, every single day for a long time.
Wow.
A lot of it was just cleaning. There was so much, but there was still the old popcorn maker. There was still the old
you were probably cleaning grime from the 1800s that was still there.
Literally, it was crazy.
Do you have a basement in it too?
There's a basement in the building.
Is it one of those creepy old basements?
It is so scary.
Oh, perfect.
It's truly
It's like
horrifying.
Kevin McAllister on Home Alone, where he's scared of the basement. I don't know if
I haven't seen it. No, I haven't seen very many movies.
Oh man, Mirryn, we're gonna have to have a get together at the venue and do a movie night.
I know we've been wanting to do a community movie night. So if you're listening to this, you think that's a good idea, then tell us.
Let them know.
Yeah, so it wasn't the plan to open Ganache first, but we did. And then when once my parents ended up with full ownership of the building, a lot more could happen.
Yeah, you just had more flexibility.
Yes, and there wasn't somebody else to have to be making the decisions with or anything like that. And so it went pretty quick after that. We did another huge redecoration in the back. It was black before we painted the whole thing white, which was crazy.
Yeah,
trimmed out everything. Yes. We trimmed out the entire building, which it's almost 5,000 square feet.
Yeah. And people don't realize how much that much paint costs.
No, it's crazy. Yeah. And so we had to do a bunch of stuff. We had to add a bunch of railings for fire and that kind of stuff. ADA, all those
did you use
crazy
any
things.
Before I got here, did you use any of the historic downtown sign and facade and tenant improvement program at all?
Yes. So we did use, I think, both the tenant improvement and the sign grant for the front of the building, because the front was all repainted. We replaced the marquee lettering and lights and all of that kind of stuff. They actually just finished it yesterday. So you'll have to drive by tonight because it looks so good. Yeah. But so we used those grants in order to be able to give the facelift on the Main Street side of things.
For those in historic downtown that don't know, on our Main Street, as part of a historic downtown Main Street program, the city, we run a facade, sign, and tenant improvement program where we do a match to help pretty up the front of your building or the inside portion of your building as people are coming in. So sorry to digress there.
That was a huge blessing that because honestly, I don't even know if the front of our building would be updated today if we hadn't had that help. So that was amazing. But I am not sure if they used any of the tenant improvement grants in the back. They might have, but I'm not 100% sure. I am actually not an owner of the venue, but my husband and both of my parents are.
Okay.
So, I mean, fast forwarding.
So you have
whole
three
thing's
businesses.
redecorated.
Yeah.
Yes. And originally I was more a part of the venue, but I was like, I can't take all this on. I have a 1-year-old.
Yeah.
I'm like, I can't have 3 businesses.
Yeah.
And so they opened the venue in April of 2024.
Yeah, we're in 4 this April.
Yes. Yeah. This April. Cedar High School had their prom there. And so that was a good
really? Prom last year?
Prom last year. Yeah. And so that was a good push to help us like
get the word out.
Get it finished.
Yeah.
Get the word out. Yeah. But really just like get all the legal stuff together and everything that we needed to start the business. But I will say it was not 100% done when they had their prom. It was done enough. Yeah. But after that, there was a lot of work that we did over the summer.
It was done as far as having your certificate of occupancy, being able to hold events, but you still had your fine tuning that you wanted to do.
Yes. Yeah. So they had a small open house in May, I believe, or it might have been April also. And people from the public could come and walk through it since it had been like redecorated. It was beautiful now. And so people could come in and see it. Over the summer, they did a lot of like finishing touches, wrapped up a lot of loose ends of projects, but they hosted a summer swing dancing once a week.
Oh, really?
And it was so fun.
How long did that go for?
So it started the night of the July Jamboree. Okay. And then every Thursday after that until about when school started, they had SUU school.
Are they going to do that next year?
I think they will. Yeah.
I hope they do.
Bring it back.
If I would have known that, I would have been there.
Yeah. It was so fun. And so, and like the community loved it. We definitely want to bring in like other styles of dance too.
Yeah.
But it was a party. So they did that for a couple months and then they just hosted Sadie's.
Yeah.
And
for Cedar High School.
For Cedar High School. Yeah. Yes. And so now it's kind of like they're at the point where, okay, we're ready. Like the building's done. We are ready to like start booking weddings, start booking parties. They had some more bookings over the summer, like parties and things like that. But now they're like, hey, let's market this thing and let's get this building occupied. Let's get it booked up because it's an awesome space. It is so great.
That's
and
cool. My daughter went to Sadie's there.
Oh,
That's
she
how
did?
I knew that. And
That's
I saw a little
awesome.
picture, I think, on the high school's like Instagram page or something. And I thought, oh, that is so rad. And it just looks so packed and just fun. Yeah.
Oh, it is so fun. When they had prom, I mean, I just sat upstairs and watched for part of it because it was so fun. It was just an absolute party.
That's awesome.
But yeah, the space is amazing. Like it's gorgeous inside. When we had that little open house, I almost kind of want to have another open house now that it's like done.
Yeah.
Because people were like, this is crazy. Like, I remember when this was a movie theater. I can't even believe it looks like this now.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it's beautiful. But yeah, my husband and my parents are doing that. They're in the process of almost creating like a mock wedding.
Yeah.
For like photographs and things like that. Okay. So it's fun. Like there's exciting things that are in the works. But hopefully in 2025, that's like when that business just explodes.
And that's we're so excited for them.
It's called The Venue, Cedar City. Yeah.
Okay. All right. There on historic Main Street. That's awesome. It's funny. I love the story how you kind of went in thinking of doing the venue and then ended up doing Ganache and then getting back to the venue. It actually, this is a really dumb digression, but it's a tie because it's my favorite band, Weezer, which I have to plug in wherever I can. Yeah. So during COVID, they were working on a big like tour album that would be like more rockish album with like Green Day and other big bands. But then COVID hit.
Yeah.
So then they said, oh, well, let's work on, or maybe it's the other way around. Anyways, they had an album that they were working on, and then they had to completely shift gears because of COVID.
Yeah.
And then through COVID, they shifted gears back to the other one. Anyways, it was funny. And the reason why I mention that is because sometimes like you go in with a plan as a business, and no matter what your business is, and sometimes you have these hurdles that come up, and you have to learn to be able to shift gears.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean you can't do what your original plan was, but that goes back to what we were talking to as well. What is your long-term goal and where are you trying to get? Oh. And a lot of businesses and organizations experience what's called mission creep, where they start off doing something and then they just chase the money. And sometimes not chasing the money, but you realize, oh, well, my long-term goal was here, but now I'm noticing an organic thing happen here. And maybe we need to shift our long-range plan. Other times, and sometimes you have to do that, and you find successful businesses do that. Other times you have the situation like yours where you had a plan in place, you had to shift gears, and then you could get back to your original plan. I don't think people know that Jeff Bezos with Amazon, even though Amazon started selling books, his long-term goal was actually always to sell online products in general. But he needed a cheap, easy foot in the door to sell stuff online.
Yeah.
And books at book rate was just cheap to do.
Yeah.
And it helped build his business to help him get to his long range goal. And so anyways, I'm kind of blabbing a little bit because there's lots of examples of sometimes where you have to shift gears, but the key is having your long range goals and what am I trying to accomplish to get there, right? So on that note, I want to wrap up with 2 different things. One, tell me long-term or, in the near future. Well, first, actually 3 different things. First, what's November's flavors going to be in November at Ganache? Do you know off the top of your head? Do you remember?
I know some of them.
Okay, tell us some of them.
Okay, so we're having an ube brownie.
Ube. Okay.
That's I don't know
fancy.
if you know what ube is.
Should I hold my pinky up when I eat it?
Yeah, literally. Yeah, so ube is a purple yam. So we'll have it the last week of October during Halloween and beginning of November. So it's all purple because so Halloween, I don't know, fun.
There you go, yeah.
But it is so good.
Really?
It's
I'm going to have to try this.
Yes, and we're having, I won't share them all, but we're having a toasted coconut, a toasted coconut chocolate flavor. That's
my wife's
really
going to be there for that to complement her hot chocolate. So.
It's so good. And then we have like all sorts of pumpkin brownies in November too that are so good.
What's going on right now during Halloween?
So right now we have pumpkin chocolate chip. We have a couple staples that they do rotate, but we almost always have one of them because they're just so popular. So like mint, peanut butter. We have a marshmallow Biscoff. We have a cookie dough. And those ones I would say are very frequent. We have all of those at some point in the month. Yeah. And then we have a coconut lime right now. That's kind of like a unique one. And a peanut butter cookie that is really good. It's a blondie brownie, gotcha. But it's peanut butter and it's super good.
You also sell ice cream, right? Like the hand scooped. Is it Far?
Yes, it's not Far's. So we actually outsource. It's a small company up in Provo, Utah. They make small batch ice cream. It's called the Rockwell. Oh, okay. They have a location in Provo and then a location in Salt Lake.
And they had like a little honeycomb where they put real honeycombs flavors in the ice cream.
Yes.
Oh, I love the little niche.
Their flavors are insane and amazing. And so they distribute to a couple places up in northern Utah. We're actually the only people outside of like Utah and Salt Lake County that have their ice cream. Too. But it's a process. We actually pick the ice cream up from them. It is a crazy process.
And race it down here to keep it cold.
Yeah. Like a truck bed full of dry ice. Like it is as like hokey as you could ever imagine, but it works. The system works great. And once they get more distributors, like I'm sure that they'll look into like getting
that's what I'm saying. That's another one of those examples where you're venturing into something else and it's going to get to a point where we realize, okay, we've got to shift how we do this. But for right now, what we're doing works, right?
Yes. Yeah. And so we have enough, like we can store to only go every few months. I'm actually going on Friday.
Oh, nice.
But
ice cream run.
Yeah. So they, when we contacted them, I feel like I reached out like 20 times in 20 days. Like, please, can we have this ice cream down here? Because we had it up there and we're like, we need something like our brownies are not, we're not talking like plain box brownies. Like these are gourmet brownies. Yeah. And so I'm like, no offense to Far's, delicious, but I'm like, I'm not serving them with Far's or
you want
Blue
some
Bunny.
sort of
like,
specialty.
I was like, we need gourmet ice cream to go with these gourmet brownies. And so I'm like, they have it and it's so good. And it is so good. So I was after them like crazy. I'm like, please let us sell this ice cream in our shop. And they were like, we don't know how you guys are going to get it. Like, we don't have any distributors outside of like a 45-minute range from where they manufacture it. But we made it happen and
that's awesome.
It's awesome. And like so many people come in for the ice cream because it is delicious.
Determination and ingenuity gets you. And one other comment is we went in the other day, it's probably when we were getting hot chocolate. And I think it was my wife or someone mentioned your carameled apples. So they were like, huge, those are bigger than the Disney ones. So if you have ever gone to Disneyland, because one of my daughters was sad, she just wanted a giant carameled apple, and for whatever reason it didn't work out. We're like, we'll have to bring her here because these are bigger and better anyways.
Yeah,
and probably half the cost.
It's actually crazy because we don't normally have that big of apples, but the last few weeks and for the next few weeks, like
so big.
The apples that we've gotten have just been so big. And so
great.
Some people have been mad actually because
they're too big.
I would say because they're priced by weight.
Oh.
And so I would say that the average apple is like $7 to $7.50, like not super expensive.
The Disney ones are like $20. Yeah.
But these apples are like over a pound. And so like all of a sudden it rings up for $12 and it's like the size of your head. And people are like, what? Yeah. Like normally my apple's like less than $8. Yeah. So people have been like, bring back the smaller ones. Like I don't need this big, but it's been so funny because people have been like, oh my gosh, these are massive.
Ginormous.
Like the biggest apples we've ever seen. Well, they barely fit in our boxes. They're bulging.
Yeah. The funny part about carameled apples too is, I mean, you could see people try to eat them on the stick, but really you've got to cut them up.
Oh, yeah. You have to. I know. It's so funny, but yeah.
Okay. Well, my last two things I really wanted is one, tell me what are your hopes and plans and over the next bit for Ganache-d, historic downtown being there, and then wrap up with any advice that you might give to small businesses trying to start up.
Okay. So honestly, I'll just be straight up. The end goal for Ganache is we want to franchise. So we would like to open a second location ourselves, probably in Las Vegas, because that's where my mom lives. She's not local to Cedar City.
I forgot you had told me that.
Yeah. And so we would love to open one there. And just not that we need one of us here, but it just is helpful to like have, I'm in Cedar, she could be in Vegas while we're still perfecting the business and the franchisability of the company. But that is the end goal. We want to franchise. And so I understand that it might be years before we get to that point, and I don't want to say this to sound like cocky or like I'm on my high horse or anything, but I really feel deep down like I am the person that can create a franchise. Yeah. I'm not a baker. I'm not good at that kind of stuff, but I'm good at systems. I'm good at being the person who says, here's the binder labeled Ganache. This is how you start the company. Yeah, right. And that's what you need in order to.
And here's the contractual agreements to franchise our company out. Yeah.
Exactly. And like, honestly, my dad's an attorney, so that really helps.
Double bonus.
So I just feel like it is a reality. Like it will be a reality one day that it is a franchise. So that's the end goal. Wow. Which I think a lot of people don't want to think that far because there is so much involved with getting it to that point. But I'm like, no, you know what? If we're going to do this, like, we're going to do this.
See, and this is what I mean by that long range thinking. Yes. No matter how small your business is, because I hear you say that and I think, she's the Jeff Bezos of gourmet brownies. You know what I mean? Like, you know what you want and you really see where you're going. I assume you'll have more hair than Jeff Bezos, though, because he's very bald. But that's great. And so that's a perfect segue, too. So what advice do you have for small businesses just trying to start up that maybe are in that quandary of, I'm really good at this? Just what advice do you have for small businesses trying to get rolling?
Yeah. So I have two pieces of advice that I feel like I always give, and then I'll give a third that's a little more specialized, I guess. Sure. So my main one is just like, you just have to start. Like truly the hardest part of owning a business is just starting the business, because once it's going, the business forces you to figure out everything else. And there will never be a perfect time. You will never feel like you're ready ever. You'll never feel like you know everything. I mean, I was at the point that I was making good money competing in competitions, and I still didn't even know what business margins were, profit margins, or anything. And so you'll never be at the point that you feel like you need to be at to start a business. So my number one piece of advice is just start. Like everything else will figure itself out, or you'll find someone who can figure it out for you. And my second piece of advice is, this is kind of controversial. If you want to be successful, I feel like to some degree, you have to eliminate all of your backup plans, because that's what breeds success. Like people are successful when they have to be successful. And if you in the back of your mind are saying, if this doesn't work out, I always have this, you're never going to give enough of yourself to make your business succeed.
Truly have to be all in.
You do. And I mean, I believe that to my core. Like if you want, and I'm not talking like success looks different for everyone, but if you want big success and you want to have those crazy dreams and make those a reality, like you have to get rid of those backup plans. Well, and that sounds so scary and people don't want to start businesses because of that. But I'm like, you have to. You can't feel like you can lean back on something else if this doesn't work out because you'll never put in enough.
I'll add to that. So Phil Knight, the founder of Nike, Nike shoe was his true passion and started as a running company. But he was a finance guy. And he had ran college for Oregon. But he had this idea about how Japanese cars were undermining the American market. And he thought, I bet we could do the same thing with running shoes. That was the premise of it. And he actually was the first to bring what was Onkasuta. And hopefully I'm not mispronouncing that, which is now today known as ASICS. Yes. He was a marketer for ASICS. And then he started Nike, but he always had these finance jobs that he did as his backup. That was his main source of income.
Yeah.
And it really wasn't till he built it up, Nike up a bit and let go and was all in. Because that's what I hear you saying. You're all in. You have to have a little bit of capital and things established to be all in.
Yes.
But it wasn't till he was all in that Nike just blew up.
Yeah.
And then it blew up even more when they signed a contract with Michael Jordan. But I think that resonates so well, no matter if you're some big company, because every big company started as something small, right? And being all in is so essential. You can't have one foot in and one foot out, or else you'll never project forward like you're hoping.
And there's something so beautiful about going all in and making it happen. It gives you this confidence that you cannot get from anything else. Yeah. Because you're like, I did this.
And it forces you to think creatively because you're like, crud, I've got to put dinner on the table.
Yes.
And I'm passionate about this. What do I need to do differently? And it helps you to self-evaluate and be more critical of this isn't working, cut it out, move forward. It makes you more decisive.
Exactly. And I don't think that you necessarily need to abandon everything else in your life to go all in. Mm-hmm. A perfect example is like when we started Ganache, I mean, it was a brand new business. We had to grow that company.
Yeah.
But one of the main things that my mom and I had said in the very beginning is we always want to pay our employees well. Like
that's one of your objectives, right?
The worst feeling ever is working and feeling like you're just being taken advantage of. It's not worth it. You know,
beans and
it's
treated
the
poorly.
Worst. Yeah. And so the number one thing that we wanted to do was like make sure that we paid our employees well for the job that they're doing. Mm-hmm. You know, I mean, they're not making $100,000 a year working part-time at the brownie shop, but for the job that they're doing, like paying them well and having a system in place where every so many months, like they are eligible for a raise. And so when things started getting tough financially, we're like, what should we do? Like, should we hire? And I'll just be very upfront. Like our biggest cost is our payroll every month. I mean, we have over a dozen employees.
Yeah.
And so we were like, is there a way that we can shrink this number to keep afloat and keep doing what we're doing? And at the end of the day, we're like, no, like we will pay these people good. And like we value their work. They're good employees. There's no reason why they all of a sudden shouldn't get their raises or we hire new people at a lesser rate or anything like that. So I'm like, we have to get creative and we have to find another way to make this business successful because we're not sacrificing that. And so I think that was just like an instance in which like we didn't give ourselves the option or the backup plan of if things don't go well, we can just start hiring at $7.25 an hour. Yeah. We didn't even allow ourselves to have that backup plan. It was like we have to do something else.
That was one of your key objectives under your goal, right?
Yes.
And so what tactics are you using to meet that objective? And that, again, as the business plan, the strategic planning is so essential to know what those high level things are, or else you are just going to make poor decisions based on your tactics working or not.
Because we had made that decision and we didn't give ourselves another option in that scenario, like it forced us to be creative and start doing things that we otherwise would not have done. If we had said like, oh, well, here's the backup plan if we don't just start making more money, you know?
Right.
But so you have to eliminate those and force yourself to make your business successful. So that's, I guess, just like one of my main pieces of advice is get rid of plan B and plan C and plan D. and just put in the work and make your business successful, because it can be like, if I could do it, anybody can do it. Trust me. If I dropped out of nursing school and built a business, like, you can build a business. So I'm convinced. But I would say my last piece of advice, and this is definitely more specialized to like a physical business or even just like a local business,
like a brick and mortar.
Yes.
Style. Mm-hmm.
So I did not feel this in my online company because I never saw anybody. I never saw my customers. I never worked with anybody in the community when it came to my business or anything like that. But since having Ganache-d, I would say my piece of advice is to just be as involved as you can be, because when we opened Ganache, we started coming to the meetings that the city held.
Yeah, our historic downtown economic development committee.
And then we started just showing up. We like started having meetings with other business owners, and then we started actually going to the other businesses that are around us that we'd never been to, even though I've lived in Cedar forever, you know? And I feel like all of that has changed who I am as a business owner, because it has made me realize like these are real people with real families that are living off of these businesses where I didn't have that personalization, I guess, or with my online company. I never saw anybody. It was just me and my computer. And so since having Ganache, I feel like that would be my number one piece of advice, is just like be as involved as you can be locally if you're a brick and mortar, or even just like face to face with people, because there's something that changes in you when you have those relationships and when you see like other people putting in the work to make their businesses successful. It like, I don't know, it just changed. I felt like it totally changed me, and it made me want to not only make Ganache successful, but now I'm like, well, I want Ganache and the pub and Centro and Bells on Main and all these neighbors of mine. Like, I want them to be so successful. And now all of a sudden, and then it went to, I want all of downtown to be successful. And then now I'm on the committee. Yeah. And I feel like, I'm like, I actually want something to be different. Like, I want us to grow, and I want this downtown to just flourish. And now I feel like it's translating into Cedar City. Like, I want Cedar City to grow. And even going to the One Utah Summit, I'm like, the whole state of Utah, like, we need to help Utah just be better. But I never felt any of that when I was just doing my online company. Yeah. It's all come since I've owned like a brick and mortar business in town. We're talking to local people every single day. And I feel like I've made sacrifices and put forth effort to involve myself in things that I wouldn't have or that I didn't even know existed when I was working online. And that has made all the difference in the way I wanted to grow my business and like foster relationships with the people around me and the people in my city. It's crazy. I feel like I'm like, let's change the world now that I have a brick and mortar, which that sounds so crazy. It's so much harder. I'm being upfront. It's so much harder than running an online business. But like, there's something so special about all of that that I didn't have before that now I have. And I would say I contribute all of it to like trying to be as involved as I could be. Yeah. And so it is a sacrifice. It takes effort to like involve yourself and sacrifice that time when you're trying to run a business to get to know other people, to learn about how processes work, to involve yourself with the city and things like that. But it's so worth it. Like I love
so
that. Worth it.
That's a really great note to end on. And I've said this time and time again. One of the great things about Cedar City and Iron County is the level of collaboration, the level of community, the synergy. I mean, other markets may not feel that way, but if you can create that kind of synergy, that sense of community, that networking in the business terms, it goes a really long way. And, I just really love that advice, because it's going to help you. And I love the way you phrased, be as involved as you can be. Yes. So some people may feel, I don't have any time to do it. So find an area where you can be, and then work from there, because that's what's going to help you grow as we get so focused. And again, it goes back to that long range thing, that broader level of thinking, to be successful in business. And clearly, we have Mirryn Morrill here with Ganache-d, the venue, and Morr Decor, right? And it's growing, and it's being successful. But just getting to know you on a personal level gets me passionate about what you're passionate about. And that's what you're getting at, about you being passionate about what your neighbors are doing, wanting to help them be successful. So, Mirryn, it's so glad to have you on. We'll have to have you come on again. We'll have to find some other random topic or see in a year if you're franchising out or whatever to have you on board again. But I just really appreciate you coming on the show, and hopefully we can do more in the future.
Okay, yeah, thanks so much for having me. This has been a blast.
Okay, sounds great. Thanks.